Hello guys, welcome back again to our class in object-oriented programming. So this is going to be the finals period of this semester, and I hope that you are still able to remember those things that we discussed so far from the preliminary up to the midterm periods. For today, we are going to talk about our sixth lesson, which is all about methods. So in methods in Java, as I am going to tell you, it's also known as functions. Before we proceed to the rest of our lecture for today, these are our objectives on this course. Of course, at the end of this lesson, you will be able to understand the use of methods in Java programming, understand the difference between user-defined and built-in methods, as well as how to use the methods with parameters and arguments. So we will be talking about those, and of course, we'll be making live or rather a live demonstration of the methods itself in Java. So what is a Java method? The Java method is a collection of statements that are grouped together to perform an operation. And in Java method, it's also a block, or a method is a block of code rather, which only runs when it is called. You can pass data, which is known as parameters, into a method, and methods are used to perform certain actions, and they are also known as functions. So of course, we need to understand what is really the importance of using Java methods and why do we need to use it. Of course, one of the main reasons why Java methods are being used, or even not only in Java rather, but also in other programming languages, is the reusability of code, which define the code once, so you only need to do it once, and you can use it as many as you wanted, or like many times you wanted it to. So another reasons why methods are important are as follows. So these keywords are some of the advantages and other advantages rather of using methods in your program. So we mentioned the code reusability already. Second, it reduces code duplication. So for example, if you just wanted to create certain action that will be done over and over again, then that creates duplication if it has the same purpose. So instead of doing it from time to time that you wanted to do the same action, so just create a method for that, and you only have to write it once and reuse it later. So it is also best for easier debugging, so you can easily see what are the errors or where are the errors coming from and what are those errors to be solved. Next is the problems are decomposed. It hides tricky logic, and of course it is easier to read and understand. So if you wanted to hide certain implementation, methods are the best way to use it. And there are things that I wanted to, to add in here. Like giving a proper method name increases the readability and understandability of the purpose of your method. So whenever you create the name for your method, make sure that it has something to do with what it does. It's, for example, if you wanted to multiply two numbers, then you can simply say multiply method, or assign the name as multiply method, so that you can immediately understand that this method will multiply integer values. So aside from that, once the code can be reusable, it also reduces the size of your code, and that's good for your space, memory allocation. Of course, complex problems can be modularized with the help of method because you are breaking big tasks into smaller ones. In case the code is written without using method, it will grow very large in size, and thus would also become difficult to test. So debugging and maintaining the code is easier already with the use of methods. Now, if there is or there are advantages rather, of course, there are also some or little disadvantage of using methods. And this is just, mostly the disadvantage of using. It, of course, takes initially a little more time to set them up because you have to like logically think what is the better way of creating methods or the most appropriate way for you to create methods for your program. So, of course, it's better to look on the bright side, and really, disadvantage of using method is very little. So, yun lang. Matagal kasi siyang set up. Pinag-iisipan siya kung paano gagawa ng method at kung proper ba yung pag-create mo ng method doon sa iyong program. So, how does method works or methods work in Java? So, in Java kasi, there are two types of methods. Ito yung tinatawag natin na user-defined methods. So, for the user-defined methods, these are methods that we can create based on our requirements. And when we say user-defined method, it is actually a method that has been written by the user or programmer. So, tayo yung gumagawa nun. Kung ikaw yung programmer, ikaw yung nag-create ng user-defined method. And these methods are modified according to what your requirements are. Now, the second type of method is the predefined, or others call it standard library methods. They are actually built-in methods in Java that are readily available to use. So, in Java kasi, predefined methods are the method that is already defined in the Java class libraries, which is known as the predefined method. So, it is a standard library method or built-in method from other programming languages. Now, we can directly use these methods just by calling them in the program at any point. So, actually, yung iba dito ay nagagamit na natin because they are already part of the class that we are invoking whenever we import a certain package to be used in our program. So, katulad ng scanner class na pag-gather ng input from the user, so tinatawag natin yung package na yan. In a way, we are already calling a predefined method from Java. So now, since we already know these types of methods, let us better understand how do we declare a method. So before we go ahead and do our program in Java, let's understand all of the things that we need to know first in methods, especially the declaration. Because before we can actually call a method, we need to declare one first. So first thing that we need to understand is first few things rather, no? So meron tayong at most 6 keywords to understand here. Meron tayong modifier, the return type, method name, parameter list, exception list, and the method body. So we need to understand those things. So in modifier, it defines the access type of the method. So for example, from where it can be accessed in your application. So in Java, there are four types of access specifiers, or other call it modifiers. Those modifiers are public, protected, private, and the default modifier. When we say public, no, from the word itself, it is accessible in all classes in your application. So, if you created an application, kapag dineclare mo yung modifier mo as public, it can be accessible to all classes. Pag sinabi naman nating protected, it is accessible within the class in which it is defined and in its subclasses. So, that's protected. Again, for protected, accessible lang siya within the class kung saan mo dinefine um, yung ano na yon, yung method na yon. So, the next one is private modifier. It is accessible only within the class in which it is defined. So, meron siyang difference. Pareho sila, yung protected and private, there are similarity. For example, accessible sila within the class kung saan nyo siya dinefine. Pero, ang protected can be accessible as well in subclasses. Ang private hindi na. So, the last one is the default. It is declared or defined without really using any modifier. So, wala kang gagamitin sa tatlo. Your Java compiler will actually assign a default modifier for you. Well, in the default modifier, it is accessible within the same class and package within which its class is defined. So, in a way, para siyang public. Most of the time kasi, ang pinaka-default talaga ng na parang ano ba to, ina-apply no Java is the public one. So, it's really accessible to all classes, to all to inside the package that you created. Now, those are the things that we need to know in modifier, no? Sa pagde-declare ng method. The second one is the return type. So, it's very clear here, the return type is the data type of the value returned by the method or void if it does not return a method. So, for example, wala kang gustong i-return or yung method na kinreate mo rather is walang i-return na value back to the main class, you have to use the word or the keyword void as your return type. So, kasi wala namang ini-expect yung main class mo na value at all, then it means it's just void method. Kaya ang i-assign mo na return type is void. Pero kapag meron po kayong ina-expect na i-return yung method, for example, sum of two numbers, may string siya na i-return, meron siyang double data type na i-return, then you have to assign return type using the data type that you are expecting for your method to return. The third one is the method name. So, the rules for field names apply to method names as well. Kung paano tayo mag-create ng class name, variable name, yung mga identifiers natin, same yung ruling na i-apply natin for that. But there is this, the convention has a little difference between those. So later on, magkakaroon tayo ng discussion regarding how to name methods. No? So the important thing here is that we need to assign a method name to our, of course, to our method. So number one rule na dun is not to use yung mga keywords that are also being used in Java already. Okay, the fourth item that we will be discussing here is the parameter list. Now, in the parameter list, it's not really required to have a parameter list. Actually, it's optional. It depends on the requirements of your program. So, if there will be like something that you are going to send and vice versa, from your main class to the method and vice versa, then you need to enter the parameter on your program using a comma-separated list of the input parameters that you will define and then proceed with your data type within the enclosed parentheses. So, ito naman magkakaroon tayo dito ng example. So, the next item is the exception list. Now, in the exception list, these are the exceptions you expect by the method can throw. You can specify these exceptions on your program. Well, it depends on you. These are actually optional, no? Itong mga ito. Then lastly, of course, the method body. It is enclosed between the braces and the code that you need to be executed to perform your intended operations. Kung ano man yung gusto mong gawin dun sa method na yun, nasa loob siya ng method body. To simplify those things that we need to know about method declaration, ito na yung ating graphical interpretation of that. Somehow this is, like the syntax of your method declaration. So again, yung public is our modifier example. The integer is your return type. So on this example that we are seeing, we are expecting this method to return an integer value back to the main class. Now, the method name here is max. Inside the parameter are the parameter list that you are defining on your program. And then inside the curly braces, open and close curly braces, is the body of your method. So whatever codes that you wanted to put there as part of the requirements of your program. Now, proceeding to naming conventions and method. So, sabi ko nga kanina, i-discuss natin to so that we can effectively create the name of our method that is easily understood by you as the programmer and by other people who's going to read your program. So, first one, a method name is typically a single word that should be a verb in lowercase or multi-word that begins with a verb in lowercase followed by an adjective or noun. After the first word, the first letter of each word should be capitalized. Now, this ruling looks, what you call that, looks complex, but it's really not. Diba, if you remember what is verb in your English, subject verb is an action word. So the reason why it is being created like this is because we wanted to make sure na kapag nakita ko tong block of code na to, I know that this is a method already by just seeing the name of the method. So, again, let's not be too technical about this. Takeaway natin dito, dapat typically isang word lang daw ang method. So, it's a verb. It's not always like that all the time, pero mas preferable na verb siya or in a form of action word. Now, kung multiple names naman ang gagawin mo, for example, no, katulad nito, meron tayong isa example dito sa ating slide, no, multiple words like find sum, compute max, set x, get x. As you can see, they all have verbs on the name. So now, ito po yung mga sample natin. Of course, these are just examples. Your method name should be, again, just like what I have mentioned in the first few minutes of this presentation, is that dapat may kinalaman yung pangalan ng method mo dun sa kailangan niyang gawing action. So, may relevance siya para mas madaling maintindihan yung iyong code. So let's read the rest of the slide. No? While defining a method, remember that the method name must be a verb and start with a lowercase letter. So, kaya katulad dito sa example, small letter lang yung find or yung letter F, yung letter C, yung letter S, and letter G. So, kasi yung pinaka-first letter mo should be in lowercase or, in other terms, is small letter. Okay, next, if the method name has more than 2 words, katulad nitong nasa example, the first name must be a verb followed by an adjective noun. Okay, so katulad nito. Now, generally, a method has a unique name within the class in which it is defined. But sometimes, a method might have the same name as other method names within the same class. And kapag magkapangalan yung method na yon within the same class, ang tawag po doon ay method overloading. Ang method overloading, again, sorry ha, I think the video stopped. No, so again, kapag it is advisable that the name of your method is actually unique on the same class. Ibig sabihin, kailangan mo lang kaparehas in general. However, again, in Java kasi, it is allowed if you are trying to do method overloading. So, ang method overloading kasi, meron kang the same name but different parameters. Actually, magkakaroon naman tayo ng discussion doon. So, yun lang. Nabanggit ko siya rito because it's part of the naming convention topic. Okay, so now that we know the process and the rules in creating the name of your method, let's proceed to how do we actually call them. No, the method needs to be called using its functionality. There can be three situations when a method is called. Okay, so a method returns to the code that it invoked when it completes all the statements in the method and it reaches a return statement, and third throws an exception. Actually, this one is not always present in your method. It just depends on you kung maglalagay kayo ng throw exception. Now, most of the time, nakikita natin itong dalawa. Pero itong last functionality is actually optional. Okay, so what is the syntax? Nag-proceed na tayo dun sa pag-create ng method mismo, no? As an example in Java. What is the syntax again for creating a method? Again, your access modifier, public, private, protected ba yan? The return type of your method. Ito ba ay void? Wala ba siyang nire-return na value? Kapag may nire-return ka na value, kailangan ang ilalagay niyo dito is the data type of the value that you're expecting to return. And then, meron tayong method name, followed by the open and close brace, parentheses, and then inside your curly brace, the method of your body. So, we know this already. Now, let's proceed to the example of a Java method. So, we are going to start, of course, with a simple example. In this example, ito po yung pangalan ng class natin, no? Public class main. Sa loob ng main class mo, you have two methods. So, yung first method mo is the main method. And your really, ito yung user-defined method. Ito yung pangalan is my method. Now, since we are not expecting of any value or any value to be returned, katulad nitong example na to, ang ginamit lang natin nakalimutan ko yung term. Yan. Return type is the static void. So, ang return type natin dito is the void, and then yung access modifier natin is static. So, yung my method natin is the name of our method. So, you may find it confusing. Ma'am, bakit po sa example nyo static yung nakalagay? According po sa inyong, what you call this, discussion kanina, ang access modifier po is only public, private, protected, and the default one. So, hindi nyo po nabanggit yung static, no? Well, the static kasi, that is actually a keyword and it can only also be used as a part of your return type. When we say static, it means that the method is associated with the class. So it is not a specific instance or object of that class. This means that you can call a static method without creating an object of the class. And that is what we're trying to do here. Hindi na tayo mag-create ng instance ng ating object. Sorry, excuse me. Hindi na tayo makikreate ng instance ng ating class. Kaya parang pwede na natin siya agad tawagin. So, kaya static yung ating ginamit. Now, in this case, ito yung pangalan po ng ating method. The name is my method. Inside the body of the method is us printing I just got executed. So, whenever we call this method, it will print I just got executed. Now, ito lang yung simple example natin on how do we call this inside our main method we are just simply calling it by typing the name of your method. So, in this case, ang pangalan po ng method natin is my method, then open open and close parenthesis, and then semicolon. So, once we call this, ipiprint niya si I just got executed. So, meaning, if I type in the my method or call the my method 3 times, it will print the I just got executed 3 times as well. So, ito po yung ating first example. Now, marami pa tayong magiging example in Java, no? Kasi ito po ay start pa lang. Now, again, to call a method in Java, write the method's name followed by the 2 parentheses and semicolon to tell that your statement ends already. Now, in this example, it will print that I just got executed string. Okay. Before we proceed to the rest of our examples, I will discuss further pa yun namang Java method with parameters. So, ma'am, ano naman po yung parameters na yon? Now, the parameters and arguments, these are information that can be passed to methods as parameter. Pag sinabi po natin parameter, it act as variables inside your method. Now, again, para lang naman siyang variable, yun yung kanyang parang nagiging role. The parameters are also specified after the method name inside the parentheses. So, di ba kanina meron tayo ditong open and close parentheses. So, you are going to place your parameter inside that open and close parentheses. Again, you can add as many parameters as you want, pero they have to be separated with the use of comma. Okay, for example, ito po yung gagawin natin. Okay. No? So, katulad nung kanunang example natin, may method yung nilagay kong name ng ating method. So, this example has a method that takes a string called fname. Ito po yun, fname. And that is going to be your parameter. Ano ibig sabihin ng fname? Actually, it's just a shortcut term for first name. Now, dito, gumawa ako ng my method. Nagpa-print ako ng fname na variable plus space siodosyo. So, every time na bibigyan ko ng value yung first name, ipiprint ngayon together with the concatenation of another string which is siodosyo. So, on the main method, nilagay ko or tinawag natin yung my method natin. Sa loob ng parameter, nilagay ko yung RODA. That's the first parameter that I have here on line 7. On line 8, tinawag ko ulit si my method. This time, ang parameter ko is floor. And on line 9, tinawag ko ulit ang my method. And on this time, Andrea naman yung ating parameter. So, all of these parameters, whenever you call them, will be thrown to the my method. So, sa loob nitong my method natin, if you notice, no, on the previous example, let me go back. On the previous example, our parameters or parentheses are empty. Kasi wala naman tayong pinapasang parameter. So, dito, nagdagdag tayo ng ating parameter sa loob on the main class. Ito yung ating mga arguments to be exact. No, ito yung ating arguments. And then, pinapasa natin siya to the method, which is, on this case, ginamitan ko ng, tawag dito, ng string data type kasi string naman talaga yung ating ipinapasa. So, yung Rhoda, Flor, Andrea are all strings. And then, inassignan ko siya ng variable name na fname. So, ito po yung ating argument. And then, inside that method body is that, again, nililinaw ko lang, pinasa natin yung fname natin. Ano ba yung fname natin? Ano yung value nun? Well, it is on line 7, the value of fname is Rhoda. Then, inad natin yung siodosyo. So, ipiprint out ngayon, Roda Chodosyo. On line 8, inassign ko yung value ng F-name as floor. So, tinawag uli natin si my method. This time, ang value na yan ay floor. So, ipiprint niya yung floor plus Chodosyo. And lastly, inassign natin yung value ni F-name as Andrea. Ipapasa niya yun dito sa method. At ipiprint si Andrea plus Chodosyo. That's why our output is going to be Roda Chodosyo, Floor Chodosyo, and Andrea Chodosyo. So that's actually our method example with parameters. Okay, now we go to multiple parameters naman this time. Diba, katulad ng nasabi ko kanina, you can have as many parameters as you want as long as they are actually separated by comma. Katulad po nitong example natin, may comma na siya. And at the same time, it should follow the data type assignment once you are using them. Kung paano yung pagkakasunod-sunod, dapat yung assignment ng variable at saka ng data type ay eksakto din. So, this time, ang example natin has, let me zoom in the program first, has 2 parameters already. Excuse me. So, before I go there, no, again, lilinawin ko lang. On the example that has a method, meron tayong tinatawag na parameter, no? Kapag nandito ka sa main method mo, this is your main method, this is what you call parameters. No? Kapag pinasa mo na siya sa iyong method, ang tawag na po doon ay argument, no? So, to clearly illustrate it, sorry, I don't want you to be confused. To clearly illustrate it, on this example, on this example here, alright, on this example here, F-name, yung first name na inassign mo, ito yon. The F-name is your parameter, while Rhoda, Floor, Andrea are your arguments. So now, on this next example, Rhoda 25, Floor 18, Andrea 13 are your arguments, and your parameters are F-name and age. Okay? So, ayun kasi yung ginamit natin na variable. Now, going back to this example, tinawag ko again ng 3 times yung my method at inassign ko yung mga arguments na to my parameters as my first names are as follows, Rhoda, Flor, and Andrea. Then, nag-assign naman ako ng age parameter at nilagyan at ang argument ko for that is 25, 18, and 13. So, whenever I call them, I am invoking my method to be executed. So, at first, sa line 7, nung tinawag ko yung my method, yung argument Rhoda and 25 ko has been thrown into the F-name and the age. As you can see, no, yung pagde-declare ko sa taas ng aking parameter, nauna yung F-name kasi dito siya nakabase din. Or vice versa. It depends on you. Kung ano bang uunahin yung gawin. Kung ito bang main method or yung sub-method na gusto mong gawin. So, ang pinaka-key takeaway doon is kailangan kung paano siya pinasa is pareho siya ng posisyon. So, next is yung age ko is 25. So, nung pinaprint out natin ito kay compiler, ang ginawa niya is F-name. So, yung line 7 tayo ha. Rhoda plus is, meron akong is na concatenation dito na string, plus the age. So, therefore, that's why the first output is Rhoda is 25. Then, nung pangalawa, Flor is 18. And lastly, Andrea is 13. So, that is why we were able to generate this output here. So far, no, I hope na may naiintindihan tayo sa lesson. Kung merong question, make sure to raise your hands or write your answers. Type it on our chat box and we will answer them after the presentation. So on this slide, please take note that when you are working with multiple parameters, again, the method call must have the same number of arguments as there are parameters, and the arguments must be passed in the same order. Again, paulit-ulit ko yung sinasabi. Kung ilan ang parameters nyo, dapat yun, ganun din kadami yung arguments nyo at they should be in order. Next po natin is another example of a method with return values. No, this time, meron ka nang ine-expect na value to be returned from your method to the main class. So, this example, let's go first to our my method. To our main method. So, dito, pinapa-print out ko yung my method ko at ang argument ko ay 3. So, ibig sabihin, ipinapasa ko tong argument number 3 ko to my method that I assigned an integer value to the x variable. So, this time, ang value ni x is equals to 3. Now, please take note that I used an integer return type here. Bakit po, ma'am? Kasi I am expecting that this method will return an integer value back to the main method. So, ibig sabihin, pag-enter ko ng data is coming from the main method, tina-throw ko siya to the my method, at ina-expect ko na si my method ay may i-return din na value pabalik kay main method. So, kaya ngayon, hindi na applicable na gamitin yung void. Kasi meron ka nang ine-expect na data from your my method rather. So, dito, kapag ka may ine-expect ka na value, you have to invoke the use of return. So, this is a keyword. Ibig sabihin, you are returning the value of whatever this formula will be, or the output will be. So, dito, nag-return tayo ng 5 plus x. Ang x natin is our parameter. Na ang argument natin doon is the number 3. So, therefore, 5 plus 3 is going to be 8. Ang i-return po na value niya is yung output. Pabalik dito. Kaya, ang magiging outcome po nito is 8. So, again, this is an example of a method with a return value. Again, just to highlight this one, no, yung void keyword is used in the examples or the void keyword that has been used on the previous example. Ito po yun. Let me go back. Ito, no? So that void keyword that has been used on this example indicates that the method should not return a value at all. Then if you want your method to return a value, you can use like any primitive data type such as this example, integer, double character, float. So yon, pwede po natin gamitin yon. So again, you have to use that if you are expecting your method to return a value. Now, before we actually summarize everything, here I wanted to show you like more examples of our method. So, ito na po, pupunta po tayo sa ating online compiler. So, again, I'm using a Programmers Java online compiler on this example. So for this example, let me just erase the comments here. Now, for this example, mag-create ako ng tawag dito ng method na magre-return ng values. Now, multiple arguments ang gagamitin natin dito. Okay. Ito siya. Sorry. Okay, nakaka-plus ako. Alright. So, public class main, gawa muna ako ng aking pinaka-method, no? Again, ang example na ginagawa natin is expecting to return a value. So, therefore, gagamit ako ng, on this example, gagamit ako ng integer as my return type. Then, pangalan ko pa rin is my method. Or, ano na lang, sum of na lang. Sum of digits. Alright, para naman maiba. Okay, kasi ito ay kayo naman ang gagawa. So, dito, may dalawa akong variable, yung aking parameter, num1 and num2. Okay. So, dito ay i-return ko lang siya. Ay, sorry po. Sa loob ng curly braces natin, gusto ko lang ipag-add yung dalawa. From the name itself, sum of digits. Num1 and num2. Okay. So, yun na yun. Now, punta na tayo dito sa ating main method. Tatawagin ko si sum of digits. So, again, dahil siya ay case sensitive, make sure na yung capital and small letters are followed. Katulad ng ginamit mo dun sa iyong main method. No? Sum of digits and then the open and close parenthesis. And again, since meron tayo ditong ina-expect na value, kailangan sa loob ng ating parenthesis, ilagay natin yung mga arguments natin. So, ano ba yung arguments na yun, ma'am? Siyempre, dahil nag-expect ka ng num1 and num2, maglagay ka ng digits dyan na kanyang i-add. So, for example, 20 and 35. So, pinapasa natin yung first argument natin, yung 20 kay num1 at yung second argument natin kay num2. So, of course, kapag niran natin yung program natin, we should be expecting that the output is going to be 55. Let's run the program. So, ayan po, no? Or we can simply like, add something here, no? Pwede ka magdagdag dyan. And bahala ka na kung paano yung gusto mong gawing presentation. Ang mahalaga dito is kailangan ang reader mo is maintindihan siya, no? So, adding of two numbers. So, ito lang is, of course, to further explain your codes, arguments. Yan. So, this is one of the examples that I am going to show you. Meron kang two parameters here or two arguments here to be submitted or to be thrown into your parameter, num1 and num2. And then another example here. Gawa tayo ng another example. Ano ba? So, mag-create ulit tayo ng, or actually, edit na lang natin to, no? But this time, gagamit tayo ng mga variable instead na values. Katulad nito, values siya directly. Gawa tayo ng variables this time. Same lang yung ating gustong gawing action. Mag-add ng two numbers, pero maglalagay ako dito ng integer sum. Kasi nga, nag-add tayo ng two numbers. Then, tatawagin natin yung, sum of digits natin. Let me copy that. And then, yung arguments natin is going to be, ito na lang din, no? Going to be, this time, 120 and 135. So, ayun po, no? Imbes na, tawag dito, direct natin na pina-output siya, inassign natin yung magiging outcome ng ating sum of digits method inside the sum variable. And then, yun na lang ang tatawagin natin dito. Okay, so, this time, tama ko na lang din yung ating comment. Alright. So, of course, dahil nabago naman yung ating values, syempre, magkakaroon ng difference sa output. But it works all the same. So, ma'am, ano naman po yung difference kung mag-assign tayo ng variable instead of direct values? Now, there will be times na magkakaroon kayo ng different values here. So, mas madaling i-manage kapag nasa variable siya. So, kapag parang tipong maraming beses ka magpapalit ng values instead of you do that a lot of times, tapos papaprint mo, then just use a variable for that para mas manageable. Okay. For example naman, gawa tayo ng method na meron namang if else, no? Pwede din naman yon. Um, check natin, no? For example, gagawa tayo ng if and else condition to check the age of your user. Kapag ang user mo ay below 18 years old, i-deny mo yung access niya sa system mo. Kapag 18 and above na siya, pwede na siyang mag-access dun sa system mo. So, ganun yung gusto natin mangyari, no? Again, using if and else naman to. Pero, meron tayong method na gagamitin. Public same na lang to. Tapos, ito, alisin ko. Para start tayo sa umpisa. So, mag-create tayo ng check age method. Ito yung magiging pangalan ng method natin, check age. With an integer parameter, yun yung magiging age ng user mo, called age. No? So, ang parameter natin is age. And then, gamit tayo ng static void. Void kasi wala naman siyang i-return na value. So, magpiprint lang yung plan ko. Magpiprint lang siya if i-approve natin yung access niya or i-deny natin yung access niya base sa age niya. So, check age, no? Check age. Tapos, sa loob ng ating method body, syempre, ilagay na rin natin yung age natin dito. Integer age yung ating parameter. So, this is the condition. If age is, tulad ng sabi ko kanina, less than 18, print access denied. You're underage. Tapos, so, create tayo ng if for that. If yung age yung user is less than 18, print niya system dot out dot print. Copy na lang natin ito. Else, syempre kapag wala ka ng ibang ina-expect, no? 18 lang naman or above, well, gumamit ka na lang ng if and else. Copy ko itong ating so, kapag ang age niya ay more than 18, hindi na siya underage, no? So, ang magiging outcome nito dapat is if else print access granted. Okay. So, yan na po, no? Kapag kung napapansin nyo, if your method is void, you don't have to use the return keyword. Ginagamit lang natin ang return keyword kapag ang ating method ay magre-return ng value. So hence, on this example, we do not use the return keyword. All we just need to do is to go back to our main method and complete our program. So in this case, for example, lagay natin dito age, no? Yung age natin is Ano bang tawag doon? Ano bang check page? Let's say, ang age na niya ay 28. Tapos, pa-print lang natin. Let's see kung meron ako mga nakalimutang errors. Fine. Okay. So, dito kung mapapansin nyo, nakalimutan ko lagyan ng double quotation mark. Kaya nagkaka-error tayo. So, again, no, take this opportunity to learn kung paano mag-debug. Correct and debug the program. Okay lang, hindi ko na masyadong nadoble. Hindi ko na masyadong tinutitigan yung program eh. Nadoble. Ano pa? Okay, dito pa tayo. Unclose, string, literal. Okay, nadoble din dun sa kabila. Okay, we're under age. System.out.print line. Let me go back and close string. System.out.print. Ano ba yan? Isa lang naman ang dinidelete ko. Kung saan yung, ayun, kung saan yung dinidelete parehas. Yan na, meron na. Hanggang ko na makulit. Okay, dito na lang. Alright. Incompatible, void cannot be converted to. Ay, oo nga pala. Ito nga pala ay pang ano lang. Sorry, pang return lang for pag may na-expect tayong return value. So, ang gagawin lang natin dito is magpasa lang tayo ng argument. Wala naman sa isip ko. So, tatanggalin na natin. Again, wala naman tayong na-expect na value return. So, ganito lang kasi ito. Papasa lang natin yung 28 natin to our age variable. So, dahil ang age natin is set to 28, dahil ito naman po ay not less than 18 anymore, the output is going to be access granted. So, this is the example of our method with the use of an if and else condition. Okay, now let us go back to our presentation. Zoom out ko lang. So, as a summary, in this lesson, every method must be given a proper name. So, by naming convention, it should be written in camel case. Tawag po natin doon is camel case, where the first letter should be small. For example, multiply my method, and this is method. And if it's multiple words, your first word is actually a verb followed by a noun, and then first letter mo, small letter. The second word mo, its first letter should be capital letter. Ang tawag po dun ay camel case. Now, a method in Java may or may not return a value. This is defined by the return type. If your return type is void, then method will be not returning anything. For string, integer, etc., the method will return a value with respect to the return type declaration at the method level. A method in Java may or may not contain a parameter. So, katulad ng example natin nung una, wala siyang parameter. Then, yung sumunod na mga examples natin, meron na siyang parameters. The access modifier in Java defines the scope or visibility of the method to the same or other classes, which is why you have to declare either public, protected, private, or just use the default that will be assigned to you by your Java compiler. So that's it for our lesson 6. On the following lesson that we will discuss is going to be still the continuation of Java methods. So thank you, and I hope that you learned something new today. Bye!